Hello, and welcome to the Resource Nexus podcast. You can check us out anytime at theresourcenexus.com. All right, so let's jump right in. I keep hearing this debate from a bunch of different places. Like, this is even a debate, the Cooper Flagg versus Johni Broome Player of the Year so-called discussion. These players are not even in the same galaxy statistically. Broome blows Flagg away. We'll run through that in a minute. But first, let's talk about two of the dumbest arguments I keep hearing. First up, the constant citing of KenPom's Player of the Year ranking system. Now look, I respect KenPom's team rankings, but these are the same rankings that had Zion Williamson the 7th the year he won. That system ranks that season as only the 37th best since 2013, which is ridiculous. And it has Flagg's as the best ever, better than Edey's even. That's an absolute joke. Zion had the greatest statistical season in modern college basketball history. Edey was right there behind him last year. Flagg, he's not even in the same universe. Even in KenPom's own team ranking system, Flagg has played the 63rd best defensive strength of schedule. His player efficiency rating, a little under 29. Zion and Edey, 40. And they did it against the 11th and 4th best defenses. How do you not acknowledge that as a big deal? Second, and this one really gets me, I've heard national media people say quality of schedule doesn't matter. That's a joke. The defenses Flagg is putting up numbers against is more comparable to slapping around the Mountain West or some of the top mid-major leagues. Even in KenPom rankings, this league more like the Atlantic 10 of old than the Atlantic Coast Conference. That's just the facts. There are multiple mid-major teams that have played better defensive competition this season. Meanwhile, Broome, he's rocking a 35-plus PER against the number one overall defensive strength of schedule. It's not even close the quality of competition he is doing this against. And let's be real, Flagg hasn't even had the individual season statistically that guys like Ryan Kalkbrenner, Hunter Dickinson, Cam Jones, Trey Kaufman-Wren have had. You could even argue Javon Small, Braden Smith, Dylan Harper, or JT Toppin have been as good as Flagg too. When you factor in the strength of schedules, they put up superior or equal stats again. These guys have objectively posted better PERs against better competition, and it's not even remotely close in some cases. Kalk, 31 PER versus the 11th best defensive strength of schedule. Dickinson, 27 PER versus the 5th best defensive strength of schedule. And Dickinson isn't just putting up numbers, he's anchoring a top 5 defense with a defensive rating 7 points better than anyone else he plays major minutes with, meaning he's the reason it's elite. Yet that guy gets no respect, especially his defense. Historically, he's anchored 2 top 5 defenses and a top 21 on KenPom. We know Kalk is a defensive anchor as well. Duke is much more of a collective defense with a lot of guys with elite defensive ratings. Malik Brown, who he's played a lot with this season, has a defensive rating 4 points better, in fact. And yet, somehow people want to ignore all of this and just talk about Flagg's 42-point game, while conveniently forgetting his 6-point, 2 of 8 shooting night against Incarnate Word and other games like that. Look, Broome is easily the better player. It amazes me that people even think this is a conversation. The objective stats don't support it. And yet, here we are, people hyping Flagg like it's the best freshman season ever, or pushing this KenPom Player of the Year metric like it's gospel. It's not. And if Flagg wins, it's confirmation bias by the same people that had him ranked first in the preseason and Broome around 5th, in my opinion. There is no way you can objectively justify it in the stats as being similar. To put this into perspective, Broome, in my ranking system, is having the 3rd best season in college basketball since 2003, only behind Zion and Edey, and slightly above Edey's first Player of the Year season. Meanwhile, Flagg, statistically, he's having your typical around 10th best season that we see every year. Now, to be fair, that's better than what I originally projected. In the preseason, I had him projected at a 23 PER, 58% true shooting, and going up against the 40th ranked defensive strength of schedule. Fast forward to now, he's at just under a 29 PER with a 59% true shooting, but now against the 63rd ranked defensive schedule The ACC isn't helping his case, but let's be real. If he was that dude, he'd be dominating it the same way Zion was when it was a top-tier conference. That, or he could have played much better versus the crappy teams in the OOC like Incarnate Word or Seattle. You don't just get to sweep them under the rug. I've had some argue that PER favors post players. Well, I'd argue it favors highly efficient scoring, and certainly bigs typically hit easier shots around the basket. Points are points and shots are shots. Bigs are typically more valuable throughout basketball history for a reason. This isn't new. It's because they can impact defenses so much more, and you need and better be getting efficient scoring to be successful. I'm not about affirmative action for guards. That said, there are plenty of paths to success. 4 of the top 10 players in my model, based off PER, are small guards, including an assist man like Braden Smith. Mark Sears was second just last year. You just got to make shots, which he isn't doing this year. Regardless, Flagg is playing all his minutes at power forward, which means plenty of rebounding and shot blocking chances. Just like past elite post players. In fact, according to KenPom, he's played 10% of Duke's minutes at center over the last 5 games. Now, let's talk historical context. The last 7 national players of the year, they've averaged a 37 PER, 65%, true shooting, 22 points, 11 boards, and nearly 2 assists. And every single one was a post player. Most of them did that versus top 20 defenses. Some, like Zion and ED, put up 40 PERs versus top 5 to 12. If Flagg wins, this would be one of the weakest player of the year seasons of the decade. And honestly, there's no case to put him over Broome in reality. While Flagg has been better than I expected, Broome also has, and I expected a lot. This is even while battling multiple injuries this season as well. Coming into the year, he rated out number 1 in the model, and we had him as the clear player of the year, front runner. In fact, his numbers rated him out as a 6.3 last year, and he's at a 8.5 this year. Flagg is a T of 5.5 for perspective. Zion was a 9.8 as the best all-time in the model. It's just objective stats. As for Flagg, exceeding expectations, well, let's pump the brakes for a second. The reality is he averaged 16 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists in high school on 62% true shooting. Yeah, he played on a stacked team, but did he outshine them in a way that made it obvious he was going to dominate college basketball? Not really. My point in the preseason and what I wrote was, do you honestly think if Broome had been on Flagg's high school team last year, he averages that same pedestrian stat line when he was putting up better stats in 24 minutes in SEC play? I said that, and I still believe Broome dominates even with that team around him. Plenty of other highly rated players from the same high school playing in the front court have flopped as freshmen in this NIL free transfer era. Let's run through a few. Dariq Whitehead, Dylan Mitchell, Caleb Houstan, Kwame Evans, Sean Stewart, Malik Renault. That added to the skepticism. Not that he would flop, but that he wouldn't be the best player, and he's not been close to that statistically. Process over results sometimes. I still think it was reasonable to be skeptical of Flagg as the best player. In fact, the things people expected him to be elite at, blocking shots, racking up steals, are actually lower than anticipated, while his usage has been higher. It was also assumed he'd play small forward, where he'd have fewer rebounding opportunities next to Brown and Maluak. But instead, he's played almost 0 possessions this year with 2 post players. Look, he's obviously a great player, but the expectations, the hype, way beyond what they should have been. And if you think he's even remotely having the kind of season Broome is, we might need to have the same talk. The NBA has lost its mind, more specifically the Dallas Mavericks front office. I want to talk a little about this trade before we wrap up, as well as the Mark Williams trade. The league has seen its fair share of shocking trades, but this one defies all logic. Luka Dončić, a 25-year-old generational superstar with one of the greatest resumes in league history at his age, has just been traded for Anthony Davis, a 31-year-old big man with a well-documented history of injuries. Even for someone as high on Davis as I am, and trust me, I'm higher on him than almost anyone in the industry, this is a mind-bogglingly terrible decision for the Dallas Mavericks. The age and talent gap. Look, I get it. You could argue that Davis is playing better right now. But let's be real. We know Dončić has been the better player overall. More importantly, he's still getting better. He's entering his prime, while Davis is firmly on the decline, even if it's only gradual at the moment. The Mavericks have basically placed a wild bet against Dončić's conditioning and commitment. They're gambling that he won't rededicate himself to his fitness and game. But let's be honest, he's still young, he's not dealing with chronic injuries. And now he has all the motivation in the world to prove them wrong. Imagine being told by the franchise you just carried to the NBA Finals that they'd rather have an aging, often injured big man instead. If anything, the Mavs just lit a fire under him to prove them dead wrong. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he comes back next season in the best shape of his career. A historically bad trade. This trade isn't just bad. It has the potential to be historically bad, maybe the worst ever. Dončić led the league in scoring last season. He dropped a ridiculous 34 points per game while nearly averaging a triple-double. He carried a flawed Mavericks roster to the finals. And what do? They throw in the towel and trade him for a guy 6 years older, already on the decline, and who has missed significant time in multiple seasons. If the Mavericks don't make it back to the finals soon, or even if they do, but Dončić goes on to win MVPs and championships with the Lakers, this deal will be remembered as one of the worst trades in NBA history. Period. The Lakers just pulled off a heist. Meanwhile, the Lakers, they just pulled off an all-time heist. It's one thing to acquire a superstar. It's another to land a 25-year-old Hall of Fame caliber talent who is still improving, inner circle Hall of Famer. You could already argue if his career ended today that he's a top 30 to 40 player easily. You could also argue he's the second best player in the NBA right now, given his age and the ceiling he's already reached. At worst, he's no lower than fourth, right behind Victor Wembanyama, Nikola Jokic, and SGA. Even if Davis is playing better today, it won't last long. The gap will close quickly, and then it'll swing dramatically in Dončić's favor within a year. If I were a betting man, the Lakers have just secured their franchise cornerstone for the next decade. Meanwhile, the Mavericks have put their entire future in the hands of a player whose best years are already behind him. Honestly, it would be less shocking if Anthony Davis's game completely fell off a cliff next year, or if he suffered a catastrophic injury that ended his career, than if Dončić never reached last season's level again. I just don't get it. You don't trade a player of Luka Dončić's caliber in his prime unless you're getting an absolute king's ransom in return. And Dallas, they didn't. Either they know something no one else does, which frankly makes me think, or this was just one of the worst bets in NBA history. They bet against their own superstar, and history suggests that's going to fail spectacularly. This isn't just an insane trade, it's a catastrophic one for the franchise. And honestly, I never thought Dončić would stay in Dallas long term. But to sell this low, that's astonishing. Oh, and one more thing. Why is it that the Lakers always seem to get these sweetheart deals? Every single time, not only did they get Dončić, but they had enough assets to turn around and land Mark Williams, who, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. Seems like an absolute home run to me. Now, I get it. Health is a concern, but you have to take calculated risks if you want to land a 23-year-old $5 million player like this for the next 2 years. Let's look at the numbers again. 27 PR, 134 offensive rating, 110 defensive rating, and the 10th highest net differential in the NBA. And that pick probably won't even be that good, especially if Luka is still on the team in 6 years. What a week for the Lakers franchise. And that's a wrap for today. I appreciate you all for tuning in and sticking around if you made it this far. First off, respect. You clearly have good taste. If you liked what you heard, do me a favor, hit follow, share it, drop a review, or just casually steal my takes and pass them off as your own. I won't judge. Be sure to check out the work at theresourcenexus.com. More episodes coming soon. More debates, more hot takes, more of me trying to make sense of the madness. Until next time, stay sharp, stay smart, and as always, don't get caught slipping. Check you later.